In the 1980s, on Staten Island, New York, Eric Goodridge is a pillar of the West African expat community. A Liberian migrant, admired for his business prowess.
A good member of the community, an interesting and active participant in the immigrant community.
He was almost like a political big shot in his home country. And he was respected in his community.
But behind closed doors, there is another Eric. One that his two young daughters know intimately.
Eric was very skilled at hiding his true nature. The community thought he was a great guy. His family knew different.
Oh no!
Eric believes in old-fashioned corporal punishment, but takes it to a sadistic level.
That kind of abuse is a recipe for disaster, for an explosion down the road.
When Eric returns to Liberia in 1992, 12-year-old Bridget is taken too. But the abuse isn't left behind.
Get out of my room! You only keep that in one place.
The fact that Bridget was abused for so long certainly had to contribute to her feeling that her life was nothing more than being abused. And she'd had it.
At 18, Bridget is legally able to escape her father's grip. Fleeing Liberia, she returns to New York. By her mid-20s, and with her father some 4,000 miles away, Bridget finally builds a life for herself as a security guard.
She had a job, she was making money, she was supporting herself, she had a decent apartment in a decent neighborhood, she had a network of friends. Despite the horrors that she was subjected to, she had made it on her own, and God bless her for doing that. She deserves a lot of credit for getting as far as she did.
But when she visits her older sister in 2007, old wounds are ripped open.
Daddy's here.
When Eric comes back into the scene, Bridget is absolutely repulsed and horrified and scared.
I think she snapped. She suffered a flood of emotions. For a moment, that little girl on Daddy's lap was Bridget, and she couldn't take it.
This is her abuser, and he's going near someone she loves, who's vulnerable, very vulnerable.
He barged in here. He's family.
Bridget confronts her sister.
Sex with me.
Their discussion reveals another terrible family secret.
He did that to me too.
Carlene is also a victim of Eric's abuse.
She had actually confirmed that he had been abusive sexually to her sister Carlene.
Rockaway, New York, 2007. 26-year-old Bridget Harris survives years of sexual molestation at the hands of her father. Now she fears he's grooming a new victim. Bridget decides to confront Eric and scours the internet for help.
She had prepared some articles regarding the effects of incest and rape, and she wanted to present that to her dad.
But Bridget isn't relying on diplomacy alone. She has a backup plan.
She'd been contemplating figuring out a way to disable him from perpetrating the same kind of horrible violence he perpetrated on her and her sister.
July 28, 2007. Bridget invites her father to her apartment. A one-on-one intervention. She wants him to acknowledge the hurt he's caused.
Every single little thing you did to me.
Psychologists and psychiatrists that treat adult survivors of child sex abuse do not recommend that the victim and the abuser sit down for a confrontation without professional guidance. But that's what Bridget tried to do, and it had disastrous consequences.
He was that little, how could you remember?
Of course I
When
remember.
Eric denies his crimes, Bridget snaps.
What? What are you gonna do?
When Eric Goodridge denied he ever touched Bridget, it tripped off, it triggered a rage.
Call me.
When children suffer long-standing abuse at the hands of a parent who's supposed to love them, sometimes they fight back.
Let go of me. Don't touch me. Let go. Let go of me. Don't touch me. Oh.
Furniture was broken. She used a pepper spray. He's screaming.
Using the tools of her trade, a can of mace and handcuffs, Bridget subdues her father. Bridget smothers Eric's screams by stuffing a towel in his mouth. Eric is now helpless, bound, gagged, motionless. But Bridget isn't done. She wants to destroy his weapon of abuse.
She tries to cut his penis off with the scissors, and it won't work. And then she remembers, oh, I have those blades.
Amputation is not enough.
She wanted to destroy the weapon that had caused so much destruction to so many people. So initially, she burns it on her stove. Then she takes it with her. She calls 911.
Someone's bleeding to death.
Bridget calls for help for her father, but makes sure his manhood can't be restored.
Bridget was so frightened that doctors might be able to reattach her father's penis, she made sure they couldn't and threw it in the ocean. Goodbye, Daddy. Assaulting her father that way must have been a very cathartic experience for her. Finally, she was the one in control.
Paramedics arrive too late to save Eric. But he hasn't bled to death. He suffocates.
If the towel is pushed far enough back, it's going to be impossible for the tongue to extricate that towel. Securing it is going to ensure that the person cannot take a breath at all.
Bridget insists she didn't set out to kill her dad, and that her online research proves it.
She had gone online and she researched John Bobbitt, who's a very famous case in America of a man who was caught cheating by his wife, and she severed his penis, and it showed that he lived.
Cutting off a penis is usually not a lethal wound. There's a large amount of blood loss, but it's not sufficient to cause death.
Bridget didn't want her father to die. She wanted him to be sexually helpless.
The prosecution isn't convinced, and Bridget is charged with second-degree murder. She undergoes psychiatric assessment.
Bridget did have a psychological evaluation by both the defense expert and by the prosecutor's expert. They both kind of came to the same conclusion.
That Bridget suffers from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oftentimes, people who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder have flashbacks to the event that caused them the horrible stress in the first place. And these flashbacks can be overwhelming.
Bridget's life story touches the jury. On September 30th, 2009, she is convicted of the lesser offense, manslaughter.
They didn't follow the law, and instead they followed their sympathy and their empathy.
Some of the jurors wrote to the trial judge saying that she had done enough time and she should be released.
I told the judge, Judge, you let her out right now, she could come live with me.
But the judge is in no mood for mercy.
He reprimanded them, and he basically said, you got caught up in a whirlwind of emotion. You showed mercy, I will show none.
Bridget Harris receives the maximum sentence, 5 to 15 years in jail.
She knows what she did was wrong, and she knows she needed to be punished for what she did.
She is eligible for parole in 2012.
If Bridget gets good psychotherapy in prison, she may be able to function well when she gets out, but she will always have the memory of what her father did to her.
In the company of strangers,
This charming couple that look harmless.
You guys going on a trip?
it pays to be wary.
They'd be invited in their house.
Let me show you where you're going to be staying.
Appearances can be misleading.
Because they trusted them.
Okay. Have fun.
Some moments can change the course of a person's life in an instant.
Hi.
I noticed that you finished your drink.
Oh. Hey.
1983, in Waukegan, Illinois.
My fiance wouldn't like it.
Today is one of those moments.
It's just a drink, baby. I won't tell anybody.
Okay.
The day 21-year-old Deborah Brown meets 28-year-old Alton Coleman.
There's a kind of instant chemistry that apparently clicks in.
You have the most beautiful brown eyes.
Really?
Coleman was a charmer who could smooth talk his way into people's confidence.
And who you here with?
Deborah is mesmerized.
She was engaged to another man, and very quickly they fell in love, and she left her fiancé and moved in with Coleman.
As the relationship grows, one thing is clear. Alton is accustomed to getting his own way.
Where were you?
I just went to the store.
One of the first things Alton did was to isolate her from her friends and family.
I'm sorry, Alton. I'm sorry.
The consequence of that is that she became totally emotionally dependent on Alton.
It's just you and me now.
Submission is something Deborah knows about.
It's just you and me.
As a child, she is the victim of repeated sexual abuse.
Deborah was used to being abused and dominated. It's what she was comfortable with. And she found the right guy for that.
The depth of Deborah's devotion is tested 1 year later in the summer of 1984, when Alton reveals a perverse obsession.
Hi, Mom.
Hey, how was the carnival?
Good.
Coleman was a deadly chameleon.
Time, didn't you?
Yeah.
He was a product of the streets,
Thank you so much for taking her.
Ah, that's okay.
knew how to work people, knew how to approach people.
Listen, I was telling Juanita that we had a couple of speakers that she could have. Would it be all right if she came in with us just to pick them up?
The couple work their charm on a new acquaintance, Juanita Wheat.
It won't take that long.
She has no idea her 9-year-old daughter, Vernita, is in danger.
Oh, please, Mom, please.
I think you say no to that face.
And I believe it was one day after Alton Coleman met this woman,
Okay, as long as you promise me you'll come straight back.
Yeah.
Okay?
she allowed her daughter to leave with Alton Coleman.
I won't be gone long. Okay?
All right.
Bye.
Let's go.
That's the last her mother sees her or of Coleman.
Vernita is the first victim of this now deadly union.
Alton Coleman took the girl, raped her, strangled her, found a car, took off out of town. And that was pretty much Alton Coleman's pattern.
3 weeks later, the couple is in Indiana. 9-year-old Annie Hilliard and her 7-year-old niece, Tamika Turks,
Whoa, girls. Am I wearing my invisible coat or something?
fall for Alton's charm.
Where are you guys off to in a hurry?
Candy store.
So are we. Let's go.
Deborah not only stands by her man,
My niece has some clothes that she's getting rid of.
she
They're
joins
pretty about your
in.
size. So why don't you come with us just to try them on?
I know. Why don't we go and try some clothes, and you go to the candy store?
What a great idea.
The couple then turns on 9-year-old Annie. They have only just begun charming their way to murder. In the summer of 1984, 21-year-old Deborah Brown and boyfriend, 28-year-old Alton Coleman, are on a road trip across the Midwest. Destination: murder.
They just found people that were innocent, murdered them, and moved on to their next victim.
Next state, Ohio.
Thank you so much for letting us stay tonight.
In Toledo, 30-year-old Virginia Temple and her 10-year-old daughter, Rochelle, invite the couple to stay.
Coleman had met the woman and her child at church.
Any friend of the Reverend's is a friend of mine.
They would approach people, represent themselves very much as a Christian couple.
It's unusual for children who were sexually abused and raped to grow up to be a sexual abuser of children, but it does happen about 33% of the time. Victim becomes victimizer, and in that process, they feel powerful instead of helpless.
5 weeks after killing their first victim, Alton and Deborah's appetite for death continues to grow.
They're just kind of on a rampage, but it's not all at once, such as a mass murder. And it's not a serial killing in that there's really not a cooling off period between murders. It's simply a spree.
Four days later, in Cincinnati, Ohio, 15-year-old Tawny Story makes a grave mistake. She trusts the strangers.
This one's for me.
In Norwood, Ohio, Harry and Marlene Walters are unaware of any investigation.
So, what do you need the camper van for? You guys going on a trip?
They are not Deborah and Alton's typical victims. But the couple is in need of money and transportation.
It's got everything you need.
Harry was found at the bottom of the basement steps. Marlene Walters' skull had been pulverized. Her scalp and face were raked more than a dozen times with a pair of vice grips. It was a very bloody scene.
Harry survives, but has permanent injuries. The survivors prove critical to solving the case. They tell investigators a woman is involved.
To have a female involved is just very, very, very unusual. So when you get a couple working together and then to have it happen over and over in a somewhat confined area, the Midwest, all that put it together that these are the people we're looking for.
Only 1 week later, the killing spree comes to an end.
They are now wanted fugitives. It's somebody recognizes them when they return to a neighborhood that they had been in before.
Police swoop in and put an end to the mayhem across 6 states, involving 8 murders.
In a 3-month period of time, they did so much damage to so many people.
Both Alton Coleman and Deborah Brown are sentenced to death. In April 2002, Alton is executed by lethal injection. Deborah's sentence is commuted to life in prison. No possibility of parole.
Deborah has never expressed remorse. Kind of makes me wonder what's going on in her head.
I don't believe either one of them would be the kind of person, if you pass them on the street, you'd think, oh my God, that's a serial killer. So not only did they not look like serial killers, they certainly didn't act like serial killers until they were time to do what they set out to do, which is kill.
A mother exposes her heartbreak to the world.
Anyone who's got any information at all.
She begs for help to solve a horrific crime.
It was a shocking crime, and the community was appalled by the details.
Can you tell us what happened?
The cruelty of it was such that I haven't seen anything like this.
Nowra, a picturesque town on Australia's east coast. A quiet, relaxed community. But not in this household. In 1993, young parents, Gun Britt and Brian Ashfield's home is chaotic.
Gun Britt had 5 children between the ages of 3 and 8. That was stressful enough.
Their relationship is rocky, and they are broke.
They lived in a welfare house, a house provided by the government, and they lived on welfare benefits. There wasn't a lot of money around.
The frustration is building.
What are you doing? What? How can you just hit him like that? You think it's all right if I hit you?
He's not.
No, it's not. It's an accident.
I hit 6.
The marriage soon falls apart.
No, you can't hit a kid. It's wrong.
Brian walks out, but is worried about leaving his children with the fiery Gun Britt.
He knew what kind of violence she had in it.
Brian's frustrated sister, Annette Ashfield, witnessed Gun Britt's treatment of her children.
Gun Britt used to just slap him across the back of the head, grab him by the hair, push him or kick him. She just doesn't know how to stop.
So the other day, I'm at home and I'm playing football. Mate.
Brian is so concerned. He goes to the child welfare authorities.
The glass breaks, and so Gun Britt, she just loses it. You see what's going on? What I mean? She just loses it, and she starts hitting.
Brian warned Children's Services that his ex-wife wasn't taking care of the kids. They didn't listen to him.
I need you to get my kids from my house. They're being beaten.
Probably thought it was just divorce squabbling.
What are you doing about the situation?
I'm out of here.
Child Services doesn't think Brian is a better option. He has a history of drug abuse. But Gun Britt is on the Child Services watch list. Officials pay regular visits.
What do you want this time?
We've had another complaint.
Another complaint. Who is it this time, huh? Did someone have an infamy or something?
Welfare Services had been to this house something like 30 times. The fact that the children were being abused and neglected was not a secret to anyone.
Do you mind if I see the kids, just to see if they're okay?
My kids are fine. There's nothing wrong with my kids.
Okay. Well, how about we sit down and have a little chat then?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, good.
Gun Britt told a community service worker that she felt violent toward the children and they should be taken away. They should have listened. In the 40 years I've been working in this field, I've never had a patient say to me, "I'm feeling violent toward my children, they should be removed." That's how rare it is.
Child welfare is a complex issue. Officials are reluctant to take children from their mother. And soon, there is another man in the children's lives. 20-year-old Austin Hughes.
What do you think? To be a dad to the kid? Really?
6 weeks after meeting Gun Britt, he moves in.
There was alcohol in the house. She was addicted to various prescription drugs. They both smoked like chimneys, and they lived on welfare benefits.
You're the best thing that's happened to me, you know?
A 20-year-old would have difficulty adjusting to just one child, their own child. That's a lot of stress. But 5 children that are not even your own? Very difficult. That was a recipe for disaster.
Austin comes with his own problems. He's a victim of abuse as a child and is sensitive to the signs.
Gun! Gun, get in here!
A pair of underpants was found on the floor with a stain that might have been blood. Could have been something else, but it might have been blood.
Melissa's been abused.
What do you mean?
Your kid, John, has been abusing Melissa.
The underpants belonged to Melissa.
I knew that kid was trouble.
I think the ordinary person would look at that and just think that it's ridiculous.
Although it's not true. On August 4th, 1993, when little John comes home from school, he has no idea of the storm he's walking into. In the small town of Nowra, south of Sydney, Australia, 25-year-old Gun Britt Ashfield is struggling to cope with 5 young children,
What are you doing?
a divorce, and alcohol. She thinks her new young live-in lover, 20-year-old Austin Hughes, will make life better. On August 4th, 1993, the household is in turmoil. One child is the focus of Gun Britt's anger.
Your kid, John.
No, you can't get away with this. I'm gonna teach him a lesson.
Of all the 5 children, 6-year-old John was the one targeted by his mother and her boyfriend, Austin,
I mean, he's got to be punished.
for abuse.
John! What did you do to Melissa?
They falsely accuse 6-year-old John of molesting his 3-year-old sister.
These people had in mind that John was touching Melissa inappropriately and that if they didn't stop him, he was going to grow up to be a predator himself.
Hurt your little sister? Huh?
They tried to revive him.
What they did first was they put him in a bath and they ran the cold taps on him in an effort to try and bring him around. And when that didn't work, they ran the scalding hot taps on him. And he still didn't come around. And they still didn't do anything.
Someone asked you, you tell them that John got bashed by some kids in a park. Okay? Do you understand?
You know what's gonna happen if you say anything, don't you?
Do you understand?
The child witnesses are told to lie.
More than 100 bruises to his body, and many of his bones were broken.
Can you tell us what happened?
The killers go public to sell their story.
My boy, John,
They hold a media conference.
he was brutally bashed when he was walking through a park on Friday.
Yes, I remember watching the media conference on the local news on that particular evening. And I remember how upset she appeared. She was almost stricken with grief.
And they cried over this little boy and what a tragedy it was and how much they loved him.
You loved him very much. Yeah, I loved him very much.
And it was all a terrible lie.
Bad acting doesn't trump routine police work. Investigators soon discover Gun Britt's history of abuse.
What do you want this time?
Unfortunately, in this case, there were so many warning signs that you have to wonder how anyone missed it.
When police search John's room, they find proof his killers were no strangers.
Blood in the house, the bent curtain rod under the bed, the hammer. It becomes obvious that they're lying.
Facing murder charges, Gun Britt and Austin blame each other and then claim John brought it on himself.
There was no evidence at all that John had ever touched Melissa in an inappropriate way.
I think John could have accidentally spilled his milk at breakfast and suffered the same fate. Gun Britt wanted to kill her son.
Both are convicted of murder and sentenced to 19 years. Many believe John was killed because he reminded Gun Britt of her husband, Brian.
She hated John because he's so much like Brian. John was a cute, cheeky little boy. It was like Brian's shadow.
Brian never gets to see his shadow again. Nor do his traumatized siblings. 18 years later, Gun Britt becomes a free woman. But her release is on strict conditions. She can never contact her children or visit the grave of little John.
It's a shock to us as human beings that the lives of children should be cut short, and in particular that they will be cut short by those who are supposed to love them.
To hide her evil past, Gun Britt changes her name to Angelic.
Gun Britt murdered her 6-year-old son because she's a sadistic sociopath.